Salt Lake City is growing, but to make way for new buildings, some old ones have to come down.
Are we parting with too much of our past? That's the topic of our latest 360 story. Here's Fox 13's Todd Tanner.
Behind a rather boring facade on Salt Lake City's Main Street near 100 South is a corridor very few feet have wandered down in recent decades. It leads to a cavernous vaudeville-era theater hidden away in the middle of a city block. Salt Lake City bought the theater in 2010 for $5.1 million. City officials told Fox 13 the theater would someday be restored, helping to secure Salt Lake City's reputation as a center of culture, art, and entertainment.
We've considered a film center. That was studied quite closely.
Mayor Jackie Biskupski, whose term ended last year, essentially gave the theater to a developer who plans to level it.
I think it was a mistake.
But in a booming city, how much history can be saved and what buildings are now most at risk? In this 360 report, we'll hear from a man who tried to save the Utah Theater, another who documents disappearing history, and the organization tasked with preservation.
Once they're gone, they're gone. We can't bring them back.
Pete ASHDOWN is a Salt Lake City businessman and resident who led the charge to save the Utah Theater, which opened in 1918 as part of the Pantages chain.
The ones in Minneapolis and Tacoma are twin sisters of the Salt Lake Theater, and both of those cities thought it was worthwhile to rehabilitate those theaters too.
Restoration could have cost upwards of $60 million. In exchange for giving it to a developer who plans to build a high-rise with 400 apartments, the city will get a small public park atop a new parking garage, and some of the theater's objects will be salvaged.
I feel like that is dressing up a corpse.
The developer also agreed to set aside roughly 40 apartments as affordable housing. Those who'll qualify for that affordable housing must earn between $39,000 and $49,250 per year.
Is Salt Lake City losing its character?
Nobody goes to Paris to stay in the housing.
With the theater issue over, ASHDOWN's attention is now elsewhere.
The Wasatch Plunge out on Beck Street. That was a beautiful Art Deco, again, terracotta building that has a large swimming pool on the inside.
Like the theater, it's a place where people mixed in the past, but is now vacant and owned by the city.
I think most places mean something to someone.
Jacob BARLOW is a real estate agent who photographs Utah's buildings for his website and Facebook page with more than 60,000 followers.
The old 1890s to 1910s chapels, I think, are just beautiful. Those seem to be going away pretty quickly.
An LDS meeting house near North Temple and 600 West was torn down for redevelopment.
If you had to pick a building that you could wave a magic wand over and save, that would be your number one priority, what would it be?
Probably I think it's the 15th ward. It's 900 West, First South. I've heard rumors that it's going to be demolished because of earthquake damage.
The building was recently for sale. The listing said demolition was an option, but this building will get a reprieve. An official announcement from its new owner, we're told, is forthcoming. But another historic LDS church on Salt Lake City's west side might not be so lucky.
We've been following the fate of this building really since the late summer.
David AMOTT heads Preservation Utah and is talking about the church at 400 North and 1100 West, which was sold by Salt Lake's redevelopment agency for $150,000 in 2020 to a man who said he'd turn it into a community center. Now he's asked for permission to tear it down and sell the land, citing earthquake damage. If that happens, he could come out hundreds of thousands of dollars ahead.
We feel like this building is viable. I know a number of other people who would be more than happy to buy it from the current property owner for the amount that he paid.
It's on the National Historic Register, but AMOTT says that doesn't provide as many protections as people commonly think.
If you have a building on the National Register of Historic Places, you can still paint it fluorescent orange, you can blow it up.
In this instance, local regulations and demolition restrictions will come into play.
That is a building that I anticipate will have a bright future.
Also on Salt Lake City's west side, Preservation Utah is concerned about the Fisher Mansion, which the city also owns with no clear plans for its future.
When you build something, you really are putting down more than brick and stone and wood and glass. You are putting down values. You are putting down worldviews.
With that said, you may or may not be surprised to hear what else Preservation Utah would like to save.
We really are quite invested in trying to save the Utah State Penitentiary.
AMOTT knows most of its 323 acres will be redeveloped, but would like to save a few core buildings.
There are thousands of stories that nobody knows in the prison that will be lost if that building goes.
Time will tell if the state values this particular piece of history or whether the demands of business and housing will win out like they have elsewhere, particularly in Salt Lake City.
Never heard anyone say, boy, I love 4 South. And I'm just going to leave it there.
Todd Tanner, Fox 13 News, Utah.